Hey everyone, we start today with the latest on the ongoing fight over President Biden's $1.9 trillion stimulus plan and what it means for all of you. Claudia Sahm, founder of Stay at Home Macro Consulting and former Federal Reserve economist, and Sonali Basak, Bloomberg Wall Street reporter, both join us now. Sonali, Claudia, thank you so much for being here with us today. So, Claudia, we want to start with you. You recently wrote a blog titled, "Who Should Get a $1,400 Check?" Tell us first what some of your arguments were in there.
So I think it is important at this moment to get money out to families. This has been a national crisis. We have all suffered in some way through this godforsaken year, and we need help. And I feel and I believe that the checks, the $1,400 topping up the $2,000, it is the best way to get money to people, trust the American people to do what is best for them and their family in this moment and over the coming months. So I can get into a lot of the technical reasons, but at the end of the day, this is just common sense. And breaking promises to Americans who have been waiting on those checks is not a good idea.
Okay, so Claudia, who then should be the ones getting the checks? Because there has been a lot of disagreement over various household income levels, whether or not they should look at how much money people are making in order to get those checks. What's your argument here? Should just everybody get checks, whether they're unemployed and making no money or households making $300,000 a year?
So I've been a policy analyst for over a decade now. My focus, both in my work and in my research, has been on how to support families in recessions. Now, if you came to me and said 1.9 trillion is too big, and I would say you're wrong, but if you said that's what we're going to do for political reasons, what should we cut out of the checks? I would tell you the highest income households are probably the least likely to need it. Now, mind you, none of these checks have gone to people in the top 10% by income. So this discussion is all about, do we cut another 10% of the population out? And if you had to do it, that's where you do it. But if you ask me, can I justify that by research? Can I justify it by the newest findings from Raj Chetty and his team at Opportunity Insights? I would say absolutely not. That would be disingenuous and it would be wrong. So, I'm a pragmatic person. If you got to cut it, that's where you cut it. You shouldn't be cutting it. And don't you act like there is evidence to back you up on this, because there isn't.
So some of the Republican versus Democrat fight here is for the income level, $50,000 versus $75,000. And you look at the numbers from Raj Chetty's team and you see the people making under 30,000, under 60,000 are the ones that are most hard hit in terms of unemployment. But you still make the case that 75,000 is a good number, is a number that is appropriate in income to still get these checks. Why is that?
Yeah, so I know that $25,000 does not sound like a lot of money to many of us, and it certainly isn't a lot of money for the people who are going to make the decision on this. But that change would cut out 40 million people from getting the full $1,400. That is a lot of people, and I know I would be certain that within that 40 million, there are at least tens of millions who really need this check. We do not know who is in the most need. Our world has been turned upside down. We never can fully identify them. And one thing I would say is these checks, because they've been in general discussion, like how big should they be? Should we even do this now? We have to face the reality that our unemployment insurance system is broken. There are people who have lost income, have lost jobs, that have not gotten money, and they get the checks. So we have to grapple with reality, and the checks are really popular, and a lot of our targeted programs aren't. So when you put them together, it's like it's good policy and it's good economics because people will spend them. And even if they don't, paying off debt, student loans, your mortgage, your rent, saving it so you can deal with whatever bad thing happens to us next. I mean, my goodness, what more do you want? Like, this is good. It's not the only thing we need, but let's get going. And I will say one thing that they have done in keeping right now the Democrats in the plan, the 75,000, is they have reduced the number of people who will get a partial check. So these are the highest income. If you had an $80 check last time and you don't get one, I think it'll be okay. So I agree with where they're going. But the moving from 75,000 to 50 is that's bad.
And Claudia, also in your Bloomberg Opinion article that you wrote for us, you talk about unemployment system, and you just brought it up right there. What do you think needs to happen, especially when we think about sort of the situation that millions of Americans are in at this point in time in the pandemic?
So the one thing that we know is that CARES Act, the enhancements that they made to unemployment insurance, they made more people eligible, people like gig workers, self-employed, and they added extra weekly benefits. And then they said long-term unemployed will stay with you. The federal government will keep paying weeks after the normal state benefits expire. Those were extended in the package in December. They were only extended through March. That is not enough. The Democrats have a plan to continue it through September. That's the absolute least we should be doing. And in the next package, the infrastructure package, we need to sit down and really seriously think about how to shore up this system, because it is the key to our safety net in recessions, and it is not working.
So, Claudia, given that you have just been at the Fed, Jerome Powell, from the beginning of this crisis, said he didn't really have the tools to hit a wider swath of America, small businesses in particular, and we're in the second round of the PPP program. Really curious about your solutions here on what can the Fed and the government be doing to get that money faster? I mean, could the Fed have done something different?
So I am a big fan of what the Fed has done so far in this crisis. They are not perfect. I think we all have to recognize that their tools are limited. The Fed, by its authority, can only work through nudging around interest rates, and they push around asset prices, step in as lender of last resort. These are the tools they have. Unfortunately, in the low interest rate environment that we are in, the Fed's tools are less effective. The federal government's tools are more effective, right? Like in a low interest rate environment, we should be doing fiscal policy. The reality of the asset-backed purchases the Fed do, they're increasing wealth inequality. You can't benefit from an increase in asset prices if you don't have the asset. So you have to have fiscal policy working with them. We have heard unprecedented strong language from the Fed throughout this crisis. Congress, please do more. And that is so important, and Congress needs to listen. And Jay Powell has continually stepped in, pushed for more. And in his last FOMC meeting press conference, he made really clear, y'all that are worried about inflation, hush, right? Like, we're not going to raise rates, and you have got to back off. We have got to get to full employment. So he has a big platform. There are other people that have big platforms too that are raising concerns, but let's go. And we need to go, the Fed and Congress together.
So, Claudia, I want to make sure I understand this right, because there have been a lot of conversations over the last few days about concerns of inflation increasing, not just because of the $1.9 trillion bill, but because of low interest rates remaining, and the Fed saying, hey, we're okay with the economy running hot. In fact, our colleague Mike McKee interviewed Dallas Federal Reserve President Robert Kaplan yesterday, and he said, quote, it wouldn't be surprising to see the cyclical elements of inflation build. As the U.S. economy recovers from the coronavirus crisis. Why shouldn't we be concerned about inflation?
So I agree that we should always look out into the future and think about the risks. This is what we did with every Federal Reserve forecast before FOMC meetings. But we thought about the upside and the downside risk, and then we had to assess the balance of risk. Doing too little right now has huge downside risks. They absolutely outweigh doing too much. I don't even think you can do too much right now, but if you want to play out that scenario, okay, there's going to be probably some pickup in inflation for some technical reasons, and if you're lucky and you get a pop of pent up spending, but it's going to not be sustained. The Federal Reserve at this point, after decades of promising 2% inflation and not being able to deliver on it, would dance for joy if they saw 2, even for a couple months, and let alone on a sustained basis. So I think we really have to learn the lessons from the Great Recession. And some of those lessons are the models we have used for decades, the rules of thumb. They didn't hold up. We've got to put them to the side. There are other tools, and the realization that if you don't push for recovery for all, get people back on their feet, we pay for that for decades. That is not good policy.
All right. Unfortunately, we have to leave it there, but this was a really fascinating discussion with you two. Claudia Sahm and Shanali Bossack, thanks so much for your time this morning.